You think a federal manhunt begins the moment you run. It doesn't. By the time you cut the monitor off your ankle at 4 in the morning, the machine has already been running for 6 weeks. And almost everything it knows about you, you handed over yourself. Every honest answer, every unlocked phone, every hour you spent proving you had nothing to hide. That is the file now. This is what a federal manhunt does to you at every level, from the first polite knock to the last one. And here is the part nobody explains before it happens to you. The system does not need you to be guilty. It only needs you to be findable. Level 1. Person of interest. It starts with a knock, and the knock is friendly. 2 detectives on your step at 7 in the morning, coats on, notebooks closed. They are not here to accuse you of anything. They say that out loud, twice. They just want to clear up a timeline. You let them in, because that is what innocent people do. Innocent people cooperate. Innocent people explain. Innocent people believe that the truth is a kind of armor, and that the faster they hand it over, the faster this ends. 40 minutes later, they thank you and leave, and you go to work, and nothing is different except a small cold weight behind your ribs that will not go away. Because you noticed how the second detective wrote when you described your evening. Not fast, slow, and only in one place. Here is what changed while you were talking. You were a name in a canvas. Now you are a data point with a timeline attached, and a timeline is the beginning of a story. Investigators are not only asking where you were, they are building a model of how you behave, so they can predict what you would do under pressure. That is doctrine, not paranoia. And notice what you are at this stage. Legally, nothing. Person of interest is not a legal status. It confers no rights, triggers no disclosure, and requires no judge to approve it. It is a working label, and the only thing it guarantees is that somebody is spending taxpayer hours on you. Which means there is no door you can knock on to ask what you have been accused of, because formally you have not been accused of anything. You cannot appeal a suspicion. You can only wait to find out what it turns into. 3 days later, your neighbor mentions that 2 men in suits asked about your schedule, your habits, whether you get visitors. He tells you over the fence like it is gossip. A week after that, they come back and ask for your phone location data. You ask whether you need a lawyer. They tell you that is absolutely your right, and that people who lawyer up usually have a reason. So you give them the phone because you are still playing the innocent person game, and the innocent person game has exactly one move. Agree. 2 days later, HR calls it administrative leave. Precautionary. Related to a law enforcement inquiry. Nobody has charged you with anything. Nobody has to. At level 1, suspicion alone has already taken your income, and it did it without a single signature from a judge. Level 2, suspect. The word arrives on a Tuesday, in the form of a court order for the inside of your cheek. 30 seconds with a cotton swab, a sealed bag, a copy of the warrant left on your counter. When they drive away, the word suspect is living next to your name in a file, and it will not move out again. Understand what is happening to the physical world around this case. When the FBI's evidence response teams processed the scene after the Boston Marathon bombing, they worked a 12-block area for 9 days. That is the standard. A scene is not searched. It is harvested. Every fiber, every hair, every partial print is lifted and logged and given a possible origin story. And this is the thing about origin stories. They can be true and still be wrong. A hair does not record how it traveled. It only records whose head it came from. Your lawyer reads the file and stops being reassuring. Your phone puts you in the neighborhood. A camera caught someone your general height walking the right direction at roughly the right time. None of it is proof. All of it is a story a prosecutor can tell, and stories are what convictions are actually made of. Then the lab comes back. Your hair at a scene, inside a building you have never once entered. Meanwhile, the ordinary world stops accepting you. Your landlord discovers a clause. Your bank flags an account. The gym cancels a membership without explaining why. None of these people have read the file. They have read a local news article that did not print your name but printed enough. This is the quiet cruelty of level 2. The criminal system has a standard of proof and a burden that sits with the state. Everything outside it has neither. Your employer does not need probable cause. Your neighbors do not hold a hearing. Long before a jury is ever assembled, the informal verdict has already been delivered by people who will never have to justify it. Your lawyer goes quiet for a long time. Then she asks if there is anything you have not told her. You tell her the truth, and she believes you, and it does not matter, because she also knows what a jury does with a DNA hit. Level 2 is where you stop arguing about whether you did it and start arguing about whether anyone can be made to believe you didn't. Level 3, the warrant. 6 weeks after the first knock, a judge signs. First-degree murder. Your lawyer tells you to walk in voluntarily, because the alternative is being taken at a gas station with your hands on the roof of your car. They process you like paperwork, because to them you are paperwork. Prints, photographs, a number. Bail lands at $500,000. Your sister remortgages to cover the bond, and when you tell her not to, she hangs up on you, which is the only way she knows how to say no. You go home wearing a monitor that beeps if you walk too close to the property line. Technically, you are free. Practically, your world is now a radius, and there's a courtroom 4 months out where 12 strangers will decide what your hair means. And then you wait, which is the part nobody warns you about, because waiting is where the pressure is actually applied. 4 months of a lawyer's hourly rate. 4 months of a monitor charging on your bedside table like a pet. 4 months in which the prosecution offers you a deal. Twice, and both times the offer is better than what you will get if you lose. And both times taking it means saying out loud that you did it. And on a Wednesday at 3 in the morning, staring at the case file, you do the arithmetic that ends level 3. The lab is wrong, but the lab is not going to admit it in time. The system built to find the truth has produced a lie, and it is going to hold. That is the moment where you become a different kind of problem. Not for you, for them. Level 4. Flight. You cut the strap at 4:17 in the morning. Signal loss triggers an alert in minutes. A patrol car is dispatched inside the hour. And in that instant, the legal category of your life changes. Not the murder charge. That is a state matter, and it was always a state matter. What changes is that fleeing prosecution is itself a federal offense. Unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. This is not a technicality. It is the hook that pulls federal resources onto a case that was never federal. Samuel Ramirez Jr., a suspect in a double homicide in Federal Way, Washington, was charged with exactly that in November 2025, more than 2 years after the shooting. Remember his name. He comes back at level 6, and he sets a record. The FBI draws a hard internal line here, and it matters more than any dramatic footage you have ever seen. In the Bureau's own doctrine, a fugitive matter is a long-term investigation into a crime, violent or not. A manhunt is something else, an intensive search for a subject suspected of criminal behavior that may involve a recent violent act, an attack on law enforcement, or a terrorist act. Different category, different clock. Different ceiling on how far up the chain it goes. You just moved yourself from the first column to the second, and you did it with a pair of wire cutters. Now meet the agency that exists for precisely this. The United States Marshals Service was created in 1789, which makes it the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the country, and its modern mandate is narrow to the point of being blunt. The Marshals generally do not investigate the underlying crime. That is somebody else's job. Their job is to locate you and put hands on you. In 2025, Marshals-led fugitive task forces arrested more than 84,000 people and cleared 87,984 warrants. Averaged across operational days, that is roughly 293 arrests every single working day. They operate 58 district-based fugitive task forces across 94 federal judicial districts. You are not a case to these people. You are Tuesday. Level 5, the task force. Here is where the movies lie to you most. There is no war room with your photograph pinned to a corkboard and red string running to your mother's house. There is a database, and there are people who are extremely good at reading it. They do not chase you. They build a pattern of life. Every card transaction for the past year. Every tower your phone ever touched. Every plate reader you drove past without noticing. The point is not to find where you are. The point is to find where you will be when the money runs out, because the money always runs out, and desperate people return to known geography. Then they work the perimeter of your life. And the perimeter of your life is made of people. Your barber, a coworker, an ex you have not spoken to in 6 years. They visit your sister 3 times, and each visit is longer than the last. And on the third one, they leave paperwork on her kitchen table describing what harboring a fugitive carries as a sentence. They do not believe she knows nothing. They cannot prove she does. So they let the paperwork sit there and do the work for them. She keeps your name out of her mouth for 11 weeks. That decision costs her a lawyer she cannot afford and a promotion she will never hear about. And consider what running actually requires of you, in practice, in a country built on records. You cannot rent anything, because renting requires identification. You cannot be employed legally, because employment requires a number that belongs to a man with a warrant. You cannot open an account, board a plane, see a doctor, or register a vehicle. Every ordinary act of adult life is a checkpoint. So you live in the cash economy, on farms and building sites and loading docks, for a fraction of what the work is worth. Because the people who pay cash without asking questions know exactly why you need them to. You sleep in rooms rented from people who never learn your real name. You buy clothes that do not match anything you have ever worn, and you teach yourself to walk differently. Because posture is the pattern people recognize before they recognize a face. None of it buys you very much time. The modern version of disappearing is competing against a decade of your own digital exhaust, and you did not know you were creating evidence at the time. You were just living. If you cross a border, the ceiling lifts again. In 2025 alone, the Marshals handled 966 international removals, extraditions, deportations, expulsions. There is no country that functions as an exit. There are only countries with slower paperwork. Level 6, the list. Everything so far has been infrastructure. Level 6 is the moment they stop hunting you privately and hand you to 200 million strangers. The 10 Most Wanted Fugitives program was created in March 1950, and it began almost by accident. A wire service reporter asked the Bureau which men it most wanted to catch. The resulting article generated so much public response that J. Edgar Hoover turned it into a permanent program. 76 years later, it is still running on the same insight. Publicity is a targeting system. The numbers behind it are not subtle. More than 500 fugitives have been located or captured off that list. 163 of those were caught as a direct result of an ordinary citizen recognizing a face and picking up a phone. Not surveillance, not analytics, someone at a motel desk who reads the news. And on March 10, 2026, the FBI made that lever 4 times heavier. The standard reward for a 10 Most Wanted fugitive went from up to $250,000 to up to $1 million. That same day, they tested it without meaning to. Samuel Ramirez Jr., the man charged with unlawful flight back at level 4, was announced as the 538th person ever placed on the list. He was arrested in Culiacan, Sinaloa, at 11:13 in the morning, Pacific time. 1 hour and 13 minutes after his name went public, 73 minutes. It is the fastest capture in the history of the program, and it broke a record that had stood since 1969, when Billy Austin Bryant lasted 2 hours. Read that carefully, because it tells you what the list actually does. 73 minutes is not enough time to run an investigation. Somebody already knew where he was. What the announcement changed was whether protecting him was still worth it. There is a second thing that happens when your face goes national, and it is the one that could kill you. Somewhere in the release, a phrase gets attached: armed and dangerous. In your case, it is not true. You have never owned a firearm. But the phrase is not a description of you. It is an instruction to everyone looking for you about what level of force to arrive with. You will never see the document that decided this. You will only experience its consequences, at 4 in the morning, in a doorway, with your hands where somebody can see them, and a very short window in which to prove you are not what the wire said you were. 2 days later, the Bureau added its 540th fugitive, Annabelle Aguirre, the first cyber fugitive ever placed on the list. The categories keep widening. The mechanism does not change. And the mechanism has never needed to be sophisticated. When Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4, 1968, James Earl Ray was added to the 10 Most Wanted on an emergency basis 16 days later. He ran for 65 days across 3 countries on a false Canadian passport. What ended the largest manhunt in the Bureau's history to that point was not a task force. It was an immigration officer at Heathrow who noticed the man in front of him was carrying 2 passports. That is the pattern nobody dramatizes. Manhunts do not end in a shootout. They end in a document check, a motel clerk, a neighbor who thought about it for a day, and then called anyway. Level 7, the end, and what it costs. Day 73. A diner in a town whose name you have already stopped using. You are eating eggs when your own face appears on the television above the counter, and it is not the Manhunt segment. It is a breaking alert. A man has been arrested for the murder. A second lab analysis matched someone else. He lived in the building. Your hair reached that scene the way hair reaches anything. On somebody else's jacket, out of a shared laundry room, carried in like a ghost following another man's crime. You set the fork down. You are innocent, publicly and on the record, for the first time in 14 months. And you are still a fugitive. This is the part that gets left out of every version of this story. The murder charge dies. The flight charges do not. Cutting a court-ordered monitor and crossing state lines to avoid prosecution is a crime on its own, and it stays a crime even when the prosecution you fled was built on a mistake. The law has no category for running from something that was wrong. So you drive north toward the same building that processed you the first time. Same prints, same photographs, different charges. Your lawyer argues duress and wrongful prosecution and gets the sentence down to months instead of years, and the judge says, on the record, that the state failed you before you failed it back. That sentence is the closest thing to an apology the system is structurally capable of producing. Your sister is in the lobby. She has been paying a lawyer for 11 weeks for the crime of refusing to guess where you were. Now do the accounting, because this is the level nobody puts in a title. You lost your job at level 1, before anyone charged you with anything. You lost your savings at level 2. You lost your apartment at level 3. You lost 14 months at levels 4 through 6. And your sister lost a year of her own life standing between you and a stack of paperwork on her kitchen table. Not one of those losses required you to be guilty. Every single one of them required only that a machine designed to find people found you, correctly, and then was wrong about why it was looking. 94,000 times a year, that machine works exactly as intended. It arrests violent people. It closes cases that families have waited decades on. That is real, and it is most of what it does. But it has no reverse gear. It cannot give back the job, or the lease, or the 14 months, and it was never built to. It was built to find you, and it is very, very good at that. That's the machine.